we can look at the overall structure of the nervous system in a few different ways. In the big picture, we can either look at how things are organized structurally in terms of anatomy, or look at how things are organized functionally in terms of how they work. The structural division between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system divides the brain and the spinal cord from the rest of the nervous system. The structural definition for these central nervous system structures is that they are housed within bone, contained within the skull or contained within the vertebral column, and are surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid. The peripheral nervous system are the nerve fibers that connect the central nervous system to the muscles and the sense organs outside of the brain and outside of the spinal column. All the peripheral nervous system structures are housed outside of bone and outside of cerebrospinal fluid. In terms of functional divisions, we have the somatic nervous system, which involves parts of the nervous system that are generally under voluntary control. Within the somatic nervous system, we can further divide things up into the pyramidal system, which are all the nerves that come from the motor strip and are the initiation point for all the movements we plan to do, and the extrapyramidal nervous system, which comes from the cerebral cortex and subcortical structures and helps to adjust our planned movements for context and feedback from the muscles and sensory systems. The other part of the functional division of the nervous system is the autonomic nervous system. These are autonomic functions, things that happen generally automatically. For example, things happening inside the internal organs. We can also classify within the autonomic nervous system a couple of subparts. The sympathetic system takes sensory information and responds by expending energy in the body. This is our fight or flight reflex. It amps the body up to be able to fight, run, do whatever it needs to do to survive. On the flip side of that is the parasympathetic system. This undoes the actions of the sympathetic system, so it calms the body back down, reduces heart rate and respiration rate, basically conserves energy. This image that I swiped off of the internet is not found in your book, but it shows a pretty broad scale coverage of the nervous system, including both central and peripheral nervous system structures. So if I pick out one piece of it, like here, the cardiopulmonary nerve, a sample exam type question would be, well, what is this thing? Is it part of the autonomic nervous system or part of the somatic nervous system? In this image, the cardiopulmonary nerve is connecting up to the heart and connecting up to the lungs, so it may be involved in things like making the heart beat and making respiration happen. So we would probably guess this is part of the somatic nervous system because those aren't things you generally consciously control. Similarly, looking at this same location, I'm dealing with a nerve that has left the spinal column and is going out to an organ, so that would make it by definition part of the peripheral nervous system rather than the central nervous system. The other global aspect of nervous system structure would be the nerve cells themselves. These are really the only types of cells we're going to go into a lot of detail about in this class. All aspects of the nervous system are made up of nerve cells, and the purpose of nerve cells basically is to transmit information throughout the body. So to send a signal along a transmission line. For these nerve cells to do this, they also have a variety of support structures known as glial cells and also astrocytes. These help the nervous system with its information transmission and storage processes. Here's an example image of a neuron showing the major parts as far as we're concerned. Nerve cells, like all cells, have a cell body with a nucleus in it. With nerve cells, this is sometimes specifically referred to as the soma. And then nerve cells have dendrites, which bring in information from other nerve cells. Sometimes the term afferent is used for information transmission coming into something. Nerves also send out signals through an axon, transmits information away from the nerve. This is sometimes referred to as an efferent transmission, and the terms afferent with an A and efferent with an E are very confusable with each other. I try to keep them straight by thinking of afferent as something that admits information and efferent as something that emits information, so the A and the E match up there. Neurons also have support cells like astrocytes that are glial cells that bring nutrition into the nerve cell. So in this image they show an astrocyte connected up to a blood vessel that helps take nutrition from the blood vessel and transmit it to the nerve. In talking about medications especially, there's often reference to the blood-brain barrier, the idea that medication you take in your blood might or might not transfer into your neurological system. This can be important for pharmacological treatments of neurological problems. Overall, there are a variety of neuron types that have to do with how much information the neurons take in. So these differences in terminology for monopolar, bipolar, and multipolar neurons all depend on how much information comes in through dendrites. All neurons have just one axon on them, just one place they send information out, but they vary in terms of how much information comes in. Monopolar neurons don't take any information in, so these neurons would be involved in processes that happen regardless of, say, sensory information, so basic body functions like circulating blood around the body. Bipolar neurons have a single dendrite bringing information in, so this is kind of our traditional or basic understanding of how neurons work, where information comes in one end and goes out the other. Multipolar neurons gather information from multiple dendrites and then either send a signal on the axon or don't, kind of depending on the information that comes in. Here are some different drawings of neurons that are in your text that give you some idea of what these different neurons look like. The unipolar neurons on the left don't have any dendrites coming into the soma to provide information into the neuron. The bipolar neuron in the middle has dendrites coming into the soma and then an axon sending information out. And the multipolar neurons over on the right show multiple different dendrite connections into the soma, which then result in information being sent out through the axon. All neurons have one axon in them, but you can see some variation in these neurons where once that axon leaves the soma, sometimes it does divide and connect up to multiple places outside of the neuron.